Well, Tadej Pogacar has been having a few problems with his bike in the Tour of Slovakia, and in the last stage he was having problems with pulling the bike up. He was losing either the back wheel, and one of the other riders actually even lost the front wheel on some wet sections. Now, it could be that the temperature of the road and the wetness of the road could have been having some impact, and also in the mountain areas there were some shaded areas where it wasn't dry, and there probably could have been some kind of moss or slime on the road that could have affected the way that the bikes were handling. But if this wasn't impacting everyone, it was just impacting some riders, and it was having such a massive effect on Tadej that the rest of the peloton was catching, because you could see he was significantly slowing up into the corners and going wide because he just didn't have the confidence in his brakes. So let's roll that intro and let's have a bit of a talk about what could be causing such an issue. Now, the issue here is this could have been caused by a number of factors. Now, when we have a braking, or the ability of the bike to brake, is, as a lot of people know, it comes down to the tyre ability in contact with the ground and how that's going to bring the bike up to a halt. So you've got the ability of the tyre to work in the wet. So if the tyre is not giving enough adhesion, what it means is it's going to take less force on the brakes to reach that point where the traction is lost and the wheels start to slide. The other component that could actually affect it is the brakes have not got much modulation. So it's almost like a switch. It's like on, as soon as you touch the brakes, you're just trying to touch them very, very lightly, and then the wheel's locking up. So the ability of the clamping on the disc with the hydraulic force could be putting too much force on that disc and causing the wheel to lock up. Or thirdly, it could be a combination of the tyres and the disc. There's just a little bit too much clamping force, and the tyres are really not that great in the wet. They're probably really good in the dry, and this combination is causing the bike to lose traction and slide. So in this situation, this has a huge impact on the rider who's got this combination. And it was suggested by Lantern Rouge, and if you haven't checked it out, go and check out the video. I'll go link it up the top here somewhere, so you can go and hear all of the commentary. And he also put some words that were said by Tadej, but they're pretty difficult to make out. I think the microphones were quite a fair way away, and he kind of was shouting in disappointment. Obviously, even if you can't make out the words, you can tell that he was saying something in his dissatisfaction with the way that the bike or the tyres or the brakes were working to be able to pull him up, and he was pretty concerned about losing the bike and coming off. Now, you know, on my channel, the disc brakes are not really my favourite component on a bike, and I'm more of a rim brake person and like to promote rim brakes, and I think they still should be allowed or be given the market alongside with disc brakes. So you should be able to make your choice and buy both. I don't think that would be too hard to do by the manufacturers. They've still got the old frames and they still could offer that. But in this situation here, we don't really know what could be causing it. Obviously it was raining, and that lowers your adhesion of the tyres, and we do know that in the mountain sections we could have had slimy roads due to the moss and particles falling off the trees, or that just the slime is growing because that part never dries out properly because of the rain, because it's in the mountains, and that could make it more greasy feeling. And we know these sorts of things contribute to the contact of the tyre on the road. Or it could be just the different tyres give different adhesion, and some tyres on some of the bikes are performing better than others, and all these things could be a factor. But one thing that is for certain, and Shimano has actually tried to correct this with their latest Durace, is the disc brakes do have a very much on and off feel to them, and that's because they've geared up the hydraulics, and I think probably a little bit too much. Now, if you ride a rim brake bike, it feels like you've got to keep pulling harder and harder and harder to get it to that point of where you lock it up, because it's just a cable. Your force is the same force that's being applied to brake. But with hydraulics, you have that hydraulic advantage, so you can just use one finger. It's a lot, it feels a lot easier to brake, and it actually is, because you're moving that brake lever and it's applying a significant force at the disc because it's hydraulically assisted, and you've got that advantage. And this could be actually having an effect on the rider's being able to feel that point of where the tire's going to let go, because you've got the hydraulic feel, you've not got that cable feel, and it's not taking as much force, you kind of lose a little bit of that feel to be able to go, hey, look how much force I'm applying. And especially if the movement, or if it's still very light, to get to full locking with such greasy surfaces, that is going to have a massive impact on your feel of being able to get as close as you can before the adhesion's lost, but you don't actually want to go far enough that you actually have lost adhesion. So it's a very fine line to ride the bike at that point. So in conclusion, I think this could be a combination of disc brakes and tyres, kind of making it very, very difficult for some of the teams and riders to feel the brake point of the brakes, and they're obviously putting too much force and then either losing the back wheel or losing the front wheel and coming off. And I've read different tyres, and they do seem to have quite a different ability in different weather conditions. Some can be better in the dry and give more traction, but in the wet they're terrible. Some can be better in the wet, but they're not quite as good in the dry. And this all comes down to the type of compounds that the manufacturers are using on their tyres. And I think also what makes that worse, if that tyre is a little bit prone to not giving good traction in the wet, it just makes it so much harder to use those hydraulically assisted brakes to reach that point before you lose traction, but not actually go over the line, which is what these pros want to do. They want to be able to brake the bike as much as they possibly can before it loses the traction to get the minimum braking distance. And of course, if you just go that little bit too far, then you lock the wheel up. And it can be disconcerting to the rider if he doesn't feel confident about getting close to that point of where the adhesion is lost. Well, anyway, guys, go and check out that video with Lanterne Rouge, and once you've gone and checked it out, come back and drop your comments down below. What do you think about this? Do you think it could be a tyre problem? Do you think it could be a disc brake problem? Do you think it could be a combination of both of them, and it's taking away the feel to the riders? Or do you think that it would have happened on any braking system and any tyre system, and it was just a road surface? Well, anyway, guys, that's where I'm going to leave it. And if you haven't, and you're a bit of a ninja watcher, it'd be really appreciated if you subscribe and ring that bell so you get all of the notifications in future. If you're a cycling nut and you like to get into cycling, and also hit that like button while you're there, because that really helps the algorithm. So that's where I'm going to leave it, and I'll see you next vid. Cheers.
Mm-hmm.